Hi there and welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. I'm IceMan and today we are taking a crack at HP Heroes Part 3. Now this series is going to be a bit longer than I originally planned. I thought I could knock it out in 1 or 2 videos, but you know, the first video had to be split into 2. This one I've counted on the fact that they're taking longer than I thought, so we're only going to do 3 of the factions and then there'll be a part 4 to do the last 3 factions. This one might be a bit longer because one of the factions unfortunately has a load of champs that fit into this category. So in case you haven't seen parts 1 or 2, what we're doing here is a rundown through all the factions. If you want to see what happened in any of the characters that HP based in the other factions, I suggest you go take a look at the first 2 videos. And I will link them at the end of this video for you to go check out. So why are we doing a video on HP champions? Well, HP champions, a lot of the time they're support champions. They heal based on HP and stuff like that, and realistically a decent HP champion, not all of them do unfortunately, should also do damage based on HP, at which point any of their damage is being increased by building up their HP, as well as their survivability, as well as the support that they can give a lot of the time. So again, the champions, very similar to defense champions, build up a defensive stat, HP in this case, rather than defense, and it makes them harder to kill. They last longer, they can help you get through content, and in this case a lot of the HP champions tend to be more supportive rather than damage dealing for the most part. So they're going to be good support champions for your team, as well as being survivable, and obviously you want that. So we finished off our last video with the Orcs, no, Skinwalkers. I'm going bonkers, as I so often do. Get me dancing boots on, I don't know what the hell I'm doing or saying anytime. You know, might as well dance on out of here. You know, I said that just so I could have an excuse to put the boots on screen, right? You know what I mean? It's just the way I roll sometimes. All joking aside, let's get into it, shall we? Otherwise we're going to be here all year. So we're going in with the Orcs. Some decent champions in this thing, but not a great deal, and not a great deal in the HP role, unfortunately. We'll start off with the only legendary to make this list in this faction, Angar. Angar is a void HP legendary, as you can see. Is A1 exacerbate, attacks one enemy 2 times, places an extra hit if the enemy has a provoke debuff. Situational, it does key in with some of his other gear, his other kit, but it's not a great ability. It's neither here nor there. Infuriate is A2, attacks all enemies, so it's an AoE, places a provoke debuff on them for 1 turn. Now this just places a provoke, he's not got a chance or any of that stuff, so you don't need to build it out for accuracy for this, and you don't need to worry about getting weak hits or any of that stuff. It just places the provoke, there you go. At least I don't think you need accuracy when they place it like this, but I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments if I am. He then places a 30% reflect damage buff on all allies for 2 turns, also places a counter attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. Now, to be fair, it's a solid ability, it's not brilliant, it's not terrible. If you really want to make this champion good, I would actually say we need other counter attack champions in the game anyway. There's only like 3 currently. Make this an AoE counter attack or all team counter attack, and all of a sudden he's a really solid champion with a really solid kit, and that would basically fix him and bring him back up to par with being a decent legendary. Now obviously, because he is placing this provoke on his A2, he then gets the extra hit if the enemy are coming at him on his A1. He can counter attack with the counter attack that he's put on himself, so it does synergize, but it'd still be better if it's on everybody else. And then obviously while this provoke is up, but it lasts for 1 turn, he could then get a extra hit with his A1. It doesn't really quite gel. Like I say, remove that bit from his A1, either make it a flat 2 hitter or a 1 hitter only. Give him ally wide counter attack, and all of a sudden he's a half decent champion. If an enemy with provoke debuff attacks, has a 40% chance of placing a provoke debuff on them for 1 turn. I'm not entirely sure what the hell that means. I think it basically means if an enemy with provoke attacks him, he's got a 40% chance, 50 if you book it out, of basically increasing the duration by 1 turn, so it can be 2 turns, at which point then his A1 can kick in. It's okay, again it's not brilliant. Each hit taken will reduce the damage taken by 5%, up to 30% in 1 round. So that's pretty decent. He can be a bit tanky, he can be a bit hard to take down because he's passive is, you know, when he's getting hit with people with provoke and stuff, he, in fact that isn't actually part of that, it just says each hit taken will reduce damage by 5%. So each time he's taking damage, he's going to be mitigating damage by 5% up to 30. He's solid, it's not brilliant. I don't think he's an amazing champion. Like I say, you make that one change on him and I think he's suddenly really good. He's got an aura that increases health, nothing to write home about. Next up we have Torture Helm. His A1 isn't even based on HP, which is ridiculous. I've said it in the previous videos, I'm going to say it again. Player in, please sort this out. HP based champions should do their damage based on HP. It then makes a lot more sense and you're not having to try and stack every stat in the game on these guys for no reason. Attacks one enemy, has a 30% chance of stealing 1 random buff. It's okay, it's nothing brilliant and the percentage isn't high, 50 booked. Damage is proportional to attack and defense. He's an HP based champion but his damage is based on attack and defense. He's ridiculous. His A2 Bloodlust attacks 1 enemy, damage is proportional to this champion's max HP and increases according to the number of dead allies. This is not a bad ability and it is based on HP. You can get the cooldowns down to 3 cooldowns and increase the damage by 15%. The only reason he's even in this list, quite frankly, is because of this ability being a HP. If it had been attack or defense, I would have just left him out because he's not then a HP champion. He does have this passive which revives his champion with 50% HP whenever he's killed. It's on a 3-turn cooldown, so obviously you can't get killed, come back, get killed again, come back. It doesn't quite work that way. It's on a cooldown. But still, it's a pretty solid passive to have. If his other kit was a bit better, it'd be a bit more usable, quite frankly. I think I tried him early game when I first started playing, and never since. Terror Beast. This is the chap that you absolutely hate facing off against in the Ice Gun's Peak. Puts up the reflect damage, tends to kill a lot of your champions, really annoying. He's an okay champ, he's a bit underwhelming to be honest. He's okay looking, but you know, again he needs some love. His A1 is based off of attack, again it needs to be based off of HP, I'm sorry but it's ridiculous. Painful Bite, attacks 1 enemy, has a 20% chance of increasing the cooldown of 1 of the target skills by 1 random turn, or 1 turn at random. It's okay, it's nothing special. This is relatively decent when you go up against it, but when you actually try using it, it doesn't really do much because reflect damage has been nerfed into the ground in this game and it's just kind of crap. When you come up against it, it kills your champs. When you use it, it doesn't really do much of anything, so he's not a huge champion, quite frankly. Attacks 1 enemy 2 times at random, places 30% reflect damage buff on all allies for 3 turns. It's not good enough. If they increase the damage coming off a reflect again and make it a bit stronger, then he becomes a bit more viable. At least this damage is based off of HP. He's a free Flesh Feast, attacks 1 enemy 2 times, heals this champion if the target is killed by this attack. Sorry, fully heals this champion if the target is killed by this attack. Places a stun debuff for 2 turns if the target survives. It's not bad, it's a single target stun, it takes books, you know, it's on 6 turn cooldown, can be brought down to 4. It can fully heal him if he kills somebody, but, you know, chances are a lot of time he's not killing anybody. It's not, like I say, he's not a great champion personally. Increases ally HP in all battles by 25%. However, he is a HP based champion, so I'm including him in the list for you to make your own mind up on. Now Vrask, he's an underused champion. I myself pulled him, I used him early on in the game. I've not much used him since, and it's primarily because in this game damage mitigation is quite often better than healing. And a lot of the damage mitigating champions are just better. If he had a little more to his kit, he'd probably be a bit more viable. If he revived or something as well, god tier. You know, but because all he does is heal, he tends to be a bit underutilised. Having said that, as a healer, he's actually really solid if you build him right. His A1 whack attacks one enemy, fills his champion's turn meter by 20% if the attack is critical. You build him out for crit. You definitely want to build him out for crit. And he gets a 20% turn meter boost, so he's going faster and faster. He's got a pretty solid speed at 97 for an epic. His A2 lightning strike, again based on HP, attacks one enemy, doesn't do anything else. I think it hits okay. I can't really remember, to be honest. It's been that long since I used him. The main thing he's used for is this cannibalism. It's passive, heals all allies by 10% of his max HP when he inflicts a critical hit. So you build him out for crit and you build him with high HP, and he can do some solid heals. You also put him in something like a relentless set, so he's getting extra turns, or any of the other gear that gives him extra turns. Then you know you're going to help heal your team a lot more. Also build him out fast with crit, and yeah, there you go. You don't need to do damage with this guy, so you don't need to build out his damage, just his HP and his speed really, and you're sorted. And then put him in the right kit. But he's a solid champion. He's just, like I say, he's missing something. He needs a bit of love, I think. War Chanter. So Death Chanter is a HP based champion, but he doesn't really do enough off of HP to be classed as such, so I'm not including him in the list. War Chanter here, he's an uncommon. Attacks one enemy, has a 20% chance of applying stun debuff for one turn. This can be booked up to 30 on his A1. He's an uncommon. It's not a bad ability for an uncommon, but it is based off of HP, and it's the reason he's in the list. But then here you go, stupidly again, his A2 is based off of attack. Attacks all enemies, has a 25% chance of placing 25% decrease attack debuff for one turn. Also has a 25% chance of placing a provoke debuff for one turn. You can book this up by a little bit, extra 15%. You can get the cooldown down to 3 turns. I don't know why you'd want to bother, to be honest. If you need an uncommon, he is HP based at least. They again need to fix the A2 so that it's actually a HP attack. That's it for the Orcs, and we're going to move on to the Demon Spawn. First up we have Tyrant, I'm not even going to try pronouncing that name, Ixlamore or something, I don't know, I can't get it out. Now this guy's not actually a HP champ, but he's called a HP champ. He has a HP aura, I'll give you that, but other than that, he does HP burn, but that's not really a HP ability, it's based off of defense. His A2 is based off of defense, and again has stuff to do with HP burn. His A3 again places an ally protection and an increased defense, nothing to do with HP. Decreases damage by enemies under HP burn. Again, I mean, you could argue he's a HP champion because he does HP burn, but HP champions really should, if they're going to be classed as HP champions, do damage off of HP, heal off of HP, do shields off of HP, something that makes you want to build up the HP. On this guy, building up his HP don't give you anything, so he's not a HP champion. And then the only other one we've actually got in this faction, there's not many, is Mortu Macabre. Macabre, I don't know how you pronounce it, you know. The big red demon himself, Stigmata, attacks one enemy, has a 60% chance of placing 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. Again, you'll notice that this is an attack based ability when it should be HP. Falling from Grace, his A2 attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit has a 90% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns. This can be booked up to 100. The block buffs debuff cannot be resisted if a target is under a heal reduction debuff. So you've got that heal reduction already up, and they literally cannot even resist it. The cooldown can be brought down by 1. You can buff up the damage and everything. His passive, Fiery Rage, has a 20% chance to unlock the secret skill Peril for 1 turn when attacked. Also has a 20% chance to fill his champion's turn meter by 25%. He's kind of a naff champion really, but this peril is actually deadly. He's A4, A3. He's got a passive in the middle, then he's got technically his A3. This is a hidden ability that only unlocks if this procs, basically, and allows you to unlock it. When it does, it's a really solid ability. It hits pretty damn hard, and yeah, attacks one enemy 2 times, will ignore shield and block damage. That's huge, as well as defense. So he ignores all defense, all shields, and all block damage. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. I've faced off against this guy, and when you get hit by it and he kills one of your champs, it's really annoying. From what I gather from people who have him, which I don't, it's just really hard to get this ability to go off. I'd swear it seems to go off more when you're facing arena teams where you're not actually physically facing somebody. When actually I think it goes off plenty, because it seems to always kill at least one of my champs and stop me from reviving them. And that's it for that faction. Now we're on to the Undead. This is going to take a while. They have a lot of them. First up we have an old favourite of mine. If you've looked back on any of my videos or you're an old fan of the channel, this guy is actually the first champion I did a guide on. He's not my first legendary or anything. I just thought he was ultra cool, and there weren't too many guides around out on him at the time, so that's why he made him my first. I absolutely still love this champion's aesthetics. He's still one of the best looking champions in the game, I think. He actually was a Halloween champion for 2019. I obviously didn't get him then, I wasn't playing back then. I started in 2020. But if you look here, he's actually got all the starting champions shrunken headed, hanging from his neck, which is really cool. Absolutely brilliant champ, I think. He's not as good as he could be, and there are bits that could improve on him, but he's still a solid HP champion, sort of middle of the pack, I'd say. He's not one of these top tier champions, but he's not bottom of the pack either. Harvest of Fear attacks one enemy 3 times, so that makes him viable for the Fire Knight. Each hit has a 25% chance of stealing one random buff from the target. This is actually pretty decent. You can book the chance up obviously by another 10%, so that's 35% chance. If you take the right master, you can get that up by another 10%, taking it up to 40. On each hit with 3 hits, it's pretty decent, and it can come in clutch. I'd swear they've nerfed this or something without me knowing about it, because I'd swear it never seems to take effect as often as it used to. It could just be that I'm facing people with more resistance these days. Obviously you do need to build accuracy for this to work. Each hit also has a 25% chance of placing a fear debuff for 1 turn if the target has no active buffs. So obviously if you've stolen all their buffs, this chance increases to 100% if all buffs were stolen from the target. So if they start with no buffs, you've got a chance to put fear on them. If you steal the buffs, you've got a 100% chance to put out. It's a really solid A1. Dream to Ashes as A2 attacks all enemies, places a block buffs debuff for 2 turns on targets under fear debuffs, removes any increased attack buff from the target and replaces them with a decrease attack debuff for 2 turns, removes any continuous heal buff from the target and replaces them with a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. The number of poison debuffs is equal to the number of continuous heal buffs removed. So you think you're up against somebody like, I can't remember his name all of a sudden, I don't have him, Bad Alcazar, puts out 2 continuous heals on everybody. He can turn those into 2 poisons on everybody, which is pretty solid. You've got block buffs, you've got poison, you've got decreased attack, all in one ability. It can be booked down to a 3-turn cooldown, and you can increase the damage by 20%. It does okay damage, nothing big, I'd say. Then you've got Lord of Terror, and this actually does some decent damage if you build him out for damage. It's A3, attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance, 100 when booked, of placing a True Fear debuff for 1 turn. Also places a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns, and decreases each target's turn meter by 15% if the True Fear debuff is placed. Again, you build him out for accuracy. You get that True Fear, you're going to put this decreased speed, absolutely brilliant, and still turn meter. As a 75%, again 100% chance of placing a sleep debuff for 1 turn if the True Fear debuff is not placed. This rarely comes in if you build him out with enough accuracy, but it's a nice little backup that counters him not doing anything if you've not got enough accuracy. And because it places. You don't need the accuracy, I don't think. I'm not even sure. I mean, this says places, so I'm not sure you need accuracy on him anyway for this bit. You do for the stealing buffs. That's a definite. Leering Grin, when attacked, decreases the duration of all buffs on the attacker. So he gets attacked and he automatically decreases the duration of all the buffs on the attacker by 1. That is absolutely brilliant. You can't knock it. I must admit, I'm going to maybe re-look at how I built this guy and see if I can use him again a bit more, because I do think he's a really solid champion. Eros the Soul Cage, one of the new champions to the game. I believe you get him from the Doom Tower or something. I've not quite worked that one out yet. I think he's one of the ones in the rotation. His A1 Jagged Knuckles attacks one enemy, places a shield buff on this champion equal to 10% of the champion's max HP for 2 turns. The shield's value increases by 1% for each poison debuff on the target. Solid A1. You can increase the shield by 15% and damage by 15%. Fetid Eruption attacks all enemies, has a 75% chance of decreasing the turn meters by 15% of enemies under 1 or more poison. Debuffs also has a 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns on enemies under 2 or more poison debuffs. By the way, these all book up to 100. Has a 75% 100 when booked chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn on enemies under 3 or more poison debuffs. Instantly activates this skill when the champion is revived by Rian the Conjurer. All in all, a really solid champion with a lot of solid skills. It'll be interesting to get him at some stage. Soul Bounty is A3, places a 25% strengthen buff on all allies for 2 turns and a 50% ally protection buff on all allies except for this champion for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown when booked out. Again, very solid. He has a passive Call of the Cage. When attacked, has a 50% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. Whenever an ally is attacked while under a strengthened buff, has a 50% chance of placing Provoke debuff on the attacker for 1 turn. Increases this champion's max HP by 5% whenever an enemy receives damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion. Whenever an enemy receives damage from a poison debuff placed by this champion, also decreases their max HP by 5%. So, you know, we can automatically see that he's going to be very useful in certain areas of the Doom Tower for this. Cannot decrease a single champion's max HP by more than 25% in one battle. Will not decrease boss's max HP. Right, no, so that kind of makes him useless for Doom Tower actually, but you know, cannot increase this champion's max HP by more than 50%. I mean, all the rest of his kit will still help in the Doom Tower, to be fair, but the one bit that would have given him his most usefulness, the Provoke and whatnot, and the decreasing max HP. But the Provoke will still work, so he's going to be alright for the Magma Dragon, but and he's going to be as good solid support and putting out poison to help you get things down. But I was thinking he'd be decent at getting the Scarab King down as well, but unfortunately that just doesn't look like it's going to be the case. Next up we have Husk. Husk is a nice champion. He's not amazing. He's one of the enemy max HP champions. He's the weakest of the bunch. Attacks one enemy 2 times, has a 20% chance of placing Provoke debuff 1 turn on his A1. The problem is it's based off of attack. It should be based off of HP. Again, Plarian, please, for the love of God, fix these champions and put the right stats on them. All of a sudden these champions become so much more relevant and easier to build for people if you do this. If you don't, they sit in people's vaults and don't get used because people don't know what to do with them or can't build all the stats in the world into them. Despair is A2, attacks all enemies, has a 35% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. This can be booked up by 25%, so that's a pretty solid percent chance to get a stun out, AoE, for 1 turn. Damage inflicted is proportional to enemy max HP. It's a really solid ability. Again, this one's enemy max HP. Only reason he's in this list is he's A3, to be fair. Attacks one enemy, damage increases according to this champion's current HP. and damage is based on HP, which it is, but it's based on his current HP. So you need this guy to be at high HP if he's going to do any damage. If he's at low HP, he's not going to do much damage. It can be booked down to 3 turns. I mean, by all rights, I think this actually does okay damage, but if you make this an AoE, I think he suddenly becomes a lot better. And if you make this based off of HP, again, he becomes a lot better. At the moment, he's kind of underutilized by a lot of people because they don't know what to do with him. Next up, we've got a champion I've recently done a guide on. In fact, I will ping up a video right over there if you go have a look. Bogoth is A1, horrendous strength, attacks one enemy 3 times each hit, has a 30% chance of increasing the duration of one random buff on the target by 1 turn. It's a mini vizier, it's pretty solid, you can increase the buff chance by 10%. It's A2, attacks all enemies, has a 60% chance of placing a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn, also has a 60% chance of placing a 50% decreased attack debuff for 2 turns on targets who receive the provoke debuff from this skill. You can get the buff chance up by another 15 and you can get the cooldown down to 3. It's a pretty solid ability and I actually use him on the Magma Dragon for the provoke. And he's a decent healer. He's not an amazing healer, but he is a decent healer. Festering Dynamo is passive. Whenever this champion is attacked, heals all allies by 50% of the damage received. Only heals by 25% of the damage received from boss attacks. This champion only receives half of the heal that all other allies receive. That's his first passive. His second passive, Eerie Presence. When attack places a leech debuff on the attacker for 2 turns. This is actually the best part of his kit, to be fair. That leech can provide a massive amount of healing on its own. If the attack, the rest of his kit unfortunately needs a bit of a buff, I think, to really increase the healing that he does, but the leech is really solid. If the attacker is under a provoke debuff placed by this champion, also has a 70% chance, 100 when booked, of increasing the cooldown of a random skill on the attacker by 2 turns, occurs once per attack. So again, this is really solid. You get the leech, you can increase cooldowns, and he's got a really solid increase all ally accuracy in all battles by 40. Again, really useful in the Doom Tower in particular, where you're going up against bosses with high resistance and you need really high accuracy. All in all, he's a decent champion, a good addition to the game. Next up, we have his little brother, the chap that they actually based him off of, the original skin. Corpulent Cadaver. His A1, Crushing Mass, attacks one enemy, inflicts additional damage if this champion is under a shield buff. The damage is equal to 30% of the value of the shield. Damage is based on HP, the way it should be. His A2, Disgusting Display, places a shield buff on this champion equal to 20% of their max HP for 3 turns. Grants an extra turn. So he puts a shield on himself and then gets another extra, and then gets an extra turn. It's solid. It'd be better if it was an AoE, but it is a solid ability. Baleful Tenacity, I think I've got that right. Attacks one enemy as an 80% 100 when booked, chance of placing a provoke debuff for 2 turns. Again, this makes him viable for the aforementioned boss in the Doom Tower. Damage is based off of HP again, just the way we like it, and you can book it down to a 3-turn cooldown. So, all in all, he's actually pretty solid for Magma Dragon, I'd say. He's got an aura that increases allied defense in all battles by 15. It's a bit small, but you know, he's not bad. He sounds like a fairly decent champion for a rare. You've got to give him that. And oddly enough, one of my favourites in today's video, I don't really use him anymore, but he is a really solid champion. We have Seeker's little brother. I actually think he looks a bit cooler without all the armour and stuff. Actually, he looks more sort of scary. Doomscreech. He's a rare HP based champion and he's actually really solid. Gets overlooked by a lot of people. Scrabbling Claws. His A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. Again, makes him viable for the Fire Knight. He's a void champion, so he's not weak anywhere. Has a 25% chance. You can book this up by 15, so you're talking 40% chance of placing a 50% decreased accuracy debuff for 2 turns. That's on his A1, and as we just said, accuracy and resistance play a huge part in the Doom Tower. So this A1 is huge. It's based off of attack and HP. I wish they'd remove the attack element there and just say it's based solely off his HP. You build his HP up really high, he's going to do more damage, and he's going to reduce accuracy, and I'm punching my mic for some reason. You know, it's a good solid ability, and the damage can be increased by 20% as well. His A2, Warning Screech, fills the turn meter of all allies by 30%. That's huge, and it's basically the same ability that Seeker does. This is where it differs. Places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, whereas Seeker does increase attack. So, if you think about places like Clan Boss, where he is used for the Batman Eater comp, or Seeker is, I should say. If you've got primarily defense-based champions like Razin and Ultan, or even our new friend Iron Brago, he can come in and fill the same role as Seeker, probably without any tweaking whatsoever. You'd be able to, because I think it's all the same stuff. His speed might need tweaking because he's probably got a different speed. I'd have to check that one, but I'm sure some smarty bands can figure it out, and you can effectively do a Batman Eater comp with defensive champs instead of offensive champs. Now, of course, because it is done with 2 man-eaters who are actually attack-based champions, I will say that the Seeker version is probably slightly better, but if you've got better DPSs that are then coming in, or a better DPS, that you know, he can still be used there, and he's got this increase. Does he increase defense? It's really solid. It starts on a 5-turn cooldown, can be booked down to 3. His A3 Shelter attacks all enemies and places a shield buff equal to 30% of max HP on this champion for 2 turns. Damage increases according to this champion's current HP. Again, it's based on his current HP. I'm not sure how that works. I think that basically means the lower in health he is, the weaker he gets. So you want to try and keep him alive and keep him at high health, which is sometimes easier said than done if you want to get decent damage out of it. It's on a 6-turn cooldown. It's an AoE attack. Personally, I think it should be an AoE shield. If you do that as an AoE shield, all of a sudden it becomes a lot more viable, and you're going to see a lot more of this guy everywhere, I think. Damage can be increased by 25%. You can get the cooldown down to 5, which is still pretty high, to be fair, which is why I say it would not be broken to put this shield on everybody instead of just him. But all in all, I think he is a really solid and overlooked champion. He's got an aura that increases ally HP and faction crypts by 21%, which obviously you need. That boost in faction crypts will help you out. So that's it for today's video. A little bit longer than the last one, but that's primarily because the Undead Horde have so many HP based champion, which is really interesting because they're all dead, so they shouldn't really have much in the way of HP, although they're undead, so maybe you could argue that they're unkillable and therefore have lots of HP, but you know, make of that what you will. Anyway, that's part 3 in the bag. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button, please hit that like button. It means more to me than you can ever know. If you hit that like button, it lets YouTube know that this was a good video and more people should watch it, and they will, hopefully. So anyway, cheers for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Catch you in the next one. Bye.